Hello, it's Erica, and I'm here today with my June wrap-up. I read quite a few things in June, so let's get right to it. First of all, I participated in TBR Takedown, which I believe was the first week of the month. There were challenges, you read books, it was a week-long readathon. If you're interested in more information, I talked about it a bit more in my TBR video, so you can go check that out. But I did finish all 5 books that I had planned for that readathon, and I don't remember which challenges they correspond to, and quite frankly, I'm just too lazy to look it up, so. But the books I read were An Artist of the Floating World by Kazuo Ishiguro. I had previously read Never Let Me Go, which I really enjoyed. I did not enjoy this one nearly as much. I ended up giving this 2 out of 5 stars in the end. It was an interesting story, and the themes in it were very interesting, but I felt like the narrative was kind of convoluted in a way that was not at all satisfying to me. And it's kind of the story of this artist who had worked to create some propaganda during World War II, and it's him in his old age kind of reflecting back on his life and whether or not it was a mistake to participate in the war effort or not. And like I said, interesting themes. It's an interesting book, but it didn't work for me in the end. Next, I read The Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum. This, of course, is the beloved children's classic, and I had never read it, even though I've seen the movie 100 times. I really enjoyed this. It was super fun. It's quite different from the movie, which I liked a lot. And this edition is gorgeous, and it has some really cute illustrations in it. So that added to the reading experience, and I'm glad that I can say that I finally read this. I think I gave it 3 out of 5 stars in the end. I also read Hard Boiled and Hard Luck by Banana Yoshimoto. I read this for TBR Takedown, but I also read it for Japanese June. This is a bind-up of 2 novellas, and they're thematically similar, but they don't center around the same characters, but each of the characters is a female protagonist who's dealing with loss in some way. And I really love Yoshimoto's writing. I think it's really beautiful and really vivid. She adds sort of this paranormal magical realism element to her writing, which isn't overwhelming, but it's nice and subtle and just very much adds to the atmosphere of her work. So I really enjoyed this as well, and I gave this 3 stars. I also read The Prisoner of Heaven by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. This is the 3rd book in the Cemetery of Forgotten Books series, which is kind of a thriller noir series, but there's a touch of the love of books in it. I think it's a very good series. This book was wrapped up a little hastily for me. It combines the narratives of the first 2 books, and it felt a little, I don't know, it didn't feel as well thought out as the first 2 books. It kind of felt like Zafón just had some notes on the backstory of his characters and decided to put them into a book. So it wasn't my favorite of the series, but I did give it 3 stars in the end. It was intriguing, and I do love the characters, so I definitely didn't hate it. And then I read a graphic novel. Again, this was for Japanese June, as well as TBR Takedown. This is Yoshihiro Tatsumi's The Pushman and Other Stories, which is a series of short stories in graphic novel form. I didn't love this. I gave this 2 stars as well. It wasn't bad, and the stories weren't bad. It just wasn't for me necessarily. Like, I didn't really identify with any of it, so I don't know. It wasn't my favorite. So that's all I read for TBR Takedown, but then I read quite a few more books throughout the next 3 weeks in June. I read The Anatomy of Being by Shinji Moon, which is a collection of poetry that she wrote between the ages of 16 and 18 and then self-published. Her poems are super beautiful. I gave the collection 4 stars. Now thinking back on it, it might be more of a 3-star read. Some of the poems became really repetitive in their imagery and their themes, which is fine, and I like it when cohesive themes bind a poetry collection together, but this was like a little bit overwrought. But I'm very excited to see what else she puts out since she was so young when she wrote these, and I think it was definitely worth reading. Then I read a little novella, which is Down the Rabbit Hole by Juan Pablo Villalobos. He's a Mexican author. He wrote Quesadillas, which I reviewed quite a long time ago, and I will link down below in case you're interested in hearing about that as well. This is a really beautiful little novella about a boy who lives with his father and kind of the fantastical life they live. So I highly recommend this. I thought it was really fun, and I gave this 3 stars. Then for the BookTube Reading Buddies Around the World Challenge, I read The Luminaries by Eleanor Catton, which is a beast. I really love this book, and I did a full review on it, which I will link down below if you're interested in hearing more of my thoughts, but I did end up giving this 4 stars in the end. I also read The Gracekeepers by Kirsty Logan. I think I might do a full review on this. I'm not sure yet. Anyway, this was wonderful. It was fantastic. I couldn't put it down. It's the story of kind of a dual narrative, kind of not. But it's a story of these characters who live in a world where most of the earth has been covered in water, so there's this division between people who still live on land, who are kind of the aristocracy, whereas the people who live on boats and travel around are kind of looked down upon. And it was amazing. There's a traveling circus, there's a bear, there are some really beautiful images. So I very much enjoyed this. I also read another graphic novel, which was Shortcomings by Adrian Tomine. This is a really quiet and beautiful story, and I very much enjoyed it. It's the first of his works that I've read, and I can highly recommend it, and I'll talk about it more in my next comic reviews video, but I ended up giving this 3 out of 5 stars. Also for the BookTube Reading Buddies Around the World Challenge, I read The Thing Around Your Neck by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. This is Adichie's collection of short stories. Most of them are set either in Nigeria or focus around Nigerian characters who have immigrated to the U.S. Really beautiful. I very much enjoyed a lot of them. There were a few absolute standouts, which were fantastic, but I didn't have much issue with any of them. But also, I ended up giving this collection 4 out of 5 stars. And then I read the 3rd volume of Amulet by Kazu Kibuishi. I've talked about this series quite a bit. I am really enjoying following this storyline, and again, I'll talk about this more in my next comic reviews video. Then I read another poetry collection, which is Milk and Honey by Ruby Carr. I do believe I'm going to do a full review on this. I enjoyed it quite a bit. It's a really stunning collection by a Canadian poet, and her poems focus on kind of women's issues. They focus on love and abuse and feminism and embracing your situation. I really, really adored them, so I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. Then my last book for the Around the World Challenge with the BookTube Reading Buddies. Sorry, I'm all over the place right now. Anyway, I also read The Elegance of the Hedgehog by Muriel Barbery. I was a little bit worried about this book because a lot of people say that it's rather slow until like the very end and that it's quite dense, which it was very dense, but I really enjoyed it. It's the story of a concierge of an apartment building in France and one of the young girls who lives there and kind of how their stories come together. I didn't hate it as much as I thought I would for some reason. I've been avoiding picking this up forever, and I actually ended up quite enjoying it, so I gave it 3 stars. And lastly, I technically finished this yesterday, which was the 1st of July, but I finished it like before noon, and I had read most of it in June, so I'm counting it now. I finished Assassin's Quest by Robin Hobb, which is the 3rd book in the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb. I did not enjoy this book as much as the first 2 books. I did think it was a little bit too long. Like, maybe 300 pages of this book could have been done without. And it's a long book. So some of the narrative, it just seemed really repetitive and like it was just looping back around on itself. But I do love the characters. I thought that the trilogy was wrapped up rather nicely, but not too nicely. And so I'm looking forward to reading more of her work in the future. So yes, that is what I read in June. I would say my favorites this month were definitely The Luminaries and The Gracekeepers. Things that fell pretty flat for me were An Artist of the Floating World and The Pushman and Other Stories, but that's okay. You win some, you lose some. Please tell me about your reading month. What was your favorite book that you read in June? And if you have any questions about any of these books, or if you've read any of them and would like to discuss them in the comments, I'm always more than happy to. And I will be back soon. Bye!